Well, hello, lovely listeners. Welcome, viewers. Today, I'm very excited. I have the wonderful Clive Edwards from Capillary Wave. So, Clive, his website is capillarywave.com, and he launched this after he, as he puts in his words, escaped the Matrix. Clive has faced a serious legal battle with the local council after he built a farm with no planning permission. Clive, naughty boy. And this culminated in the council issuing just the 9 enforcement notices against you. And each notice is an indictable offence which carries the risk of an unlimited fine and maybe even prison. But you still didn't comply. And then, despite this clear defiance, no authority or council has wanted to bring the matter to a court. So I'm presuming you still haven't been to court at this point. So Clive's case serves as a real-world example of the legal principles shared in the articles that he obviously shares on his website. You've been traveling the length and breadth of Britain, helping other farmers with their own court cases, from Cumbria right down to Cornwall. And this experience has provided valuable key insights into how we are actually controlled by the government. I mean, we know that they're trying to control us and they're trying to control us even more. And you are about to release, very exciting, your first book, and that is titled The Consent of the Governed. And your quote that you shared with me: if mankind only understood their legal position in relation to their government, they would no longer wish to be citizens. Um, Fair play. So, welcome, Clive. It's an absolute pleasure to have you.
Hi, Mel. Lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
Oh, you're very welcome. Right. So I would like to know a bit about you, Clive, and your backstory. Were you ever a normie? When did it all change for you? Why did it change? And, what sort of brought you onto the journey that you're on to right now? So over to you, my friend.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's nothing exceptional about me, Mel. I was Mr. Average. I ran a construction company, very small, had a few employees, few subcontractors. Loved playing football. Ran a local football team. Managed the team. We were fairly successful at a local level. Thoroughly enjoyable times, And then this was prior to 2007. As you said, I wasn't really a naughty boy then, but in the council's eyes, at least, anyway. And then 2007 came, the recession hit. You may remember it's very tough on the construction industry. Well, actually, it was known as the Great Recession, so it was pretty much tough on everyone. But
Yeah.
construction industry is usually first in the recession and last out. Well, yeah, that hit me pretty hard. And at the same time, I had HMRC coming after me for they plucked the figure of 60 grand at the air. They wanted off me in VAT, and then the council said I couldn't use this field I've got to store building materials and me building vans and things. So I had a trifecta of things hit me all at once, and I
What?
thought,
Why couldn't you
yeah,
use it, Clive? What was the reason?
I stored like we had a few vans. Obviously, we've got a small building firm, so we had a few vans. We used to meet their lads in the morning, and I for Williams built, builders trailers and packs of bricks and all the things a builder uses to get the vans ready before they go off to work in the morning. So and this was all, tucked neatly out the way. It wasn't on site and view and strewn across everywhere. But the council came to me one day when I was we got the shipping container that is at the yard got broken into. So I put up some, B&Q wooden fences that you just go down B&Q and pick one off the shelf sort of thing. They're just standard. There's nothing, outrageous about them. Me and a friend were putting some of this fencing up on the inside of the hedge just so that you couldn't look through the hedge in winter at the
Yeah.
tools and different things. So that's what we were doing. And then we started that in the morning. By the afternoon, I had a guy from the council with a clipboard. He was head of planning enforcement, came down and said, "You can't do that. Stop what you're doing." So I was quite surprised by that. This is just a standard wooden fence. Do you know what I mean? And then I also did some other measures. It's just a normal 5 bar gate. This was a field with a stable block in, bearing in mind. So where this story goes is going to be very interesting, hopefully, to your audience, because this all kicked off over me putting up some wooden fences. It's ended with me building a farm, and the
Yeah.
council do not want to know. They've ran away in the other direction. Now, don't get me wrong. I had a few years of serious conversations, let's say, in between. I've had police riot vans turn up, police dog units, locksmiths, councillors, you name it. I've gone through the mill. but I've come out the other side. So whilst this, it sounds pretty boring initially, but they came down pretty hard on me just putting up like some different gates to stop thieves getting over the gate and some wooden fences to stop thieves looking through and trying to rob me tools.
I just
That's
want to know what their reasoning was, Clive, because it's like it's your land. Is it not in keeping with the area or something shite like that?
Yeah, I'm on the edge of a. I'm in the middle of Somerset, on the edge of a village. It's down a quiet country lane. Um, and yeah, someone obviously reported me.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, we all know there's small-minded people
yeah,
out there,
yeah,
but
yeah.
and the council have to act on a complaint. So it starts with a complaint. So they turned up with his clipboard, the head guy, and he said, and I got on with him all right. Listen, like as we'll go on, I've got no malice, no axe to grind against these guys because actually it was through them putting me in a very, very awkward corner where it changed my direction of my life. And yeah, so I've got no axe to grind with these people. They've got a job to do. I was ignorant of the law. Like I said, I was Mr. Average Joe. So I was just interested in football and work. That was it.
Yeah.
I had no clue about the law. Like maybe a lot of the average citizens out there, we don't really know how we're governed. I mean, I've often said before, just ask around your local friend group and how we're governed. No one really truly knows. Well, I had to go on a journey to find out exactly how we knew to keep myself out of prison because they issued 9 enforcement notices against me. And each notice is an indictable offence, which means that's a Crown Court matter. And that means it's unlimited fines for planning enforcement notices and potential imprisonment if you don't pay the fine. And I know people who've gone to prison for these fines. And in fact, just as a smaller side note, I kept the farmer out of prison. There's a famous case down in Reigate, the High Court in London. It was the guy who built a castle behind Hay Bells, Mr. Robert Fiddler. It was all over the news. It's probably the biggest planning case in the country at the time. Rob down in Surrey, he built a castle, hid it behind hay bales, and took the hay bales away, revealed his castle. Anyway, long story short, he heard about the work I was doing around the country, and mutual friend got in touch, said, "Can you help me out? Because the council want to send him to prison." So we helped him out at the High Court in London and kept him out of prison. So I've been on a bit of a journey, Mel. It's been a bit of a roller coaster.
Wow, you certainly have. I'm intrigued as to why somebody would want to build a castle, but that's another story. Um, I'm sure you can get into it in a bit, but in terms of you then, so you basically got the man with the clipboard. Oh no, 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 you can't do that, and all that crap.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and obviously you'd explained, well, it's because of theft and security and this, that, and the other. They didn't give
yeah,
a shit. And
yeah.
so what happened next?
So, like I said, this guy, like, he's a nice enough guy. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I kept it friendly because, like, I didn't, I didn't have a clue about the law. I didn't know, I didn't have a leg to stand on. Do you know what I mean? These people are coming to me saying, basically, it evolved into like you've got to stop using your field for the business purposes because they classed it as a change of use. You know what I mean? It was just a field with a stable block in, a few, for a few horses, and of course, I'm using it to store vans and build and packs of bricks and things. And they're saying now you've changed, it's a change of use. Stop using it for your business. Well, this is in 2007 when things were tight enough anyway. Work was thin on the ground, and now I've had this extra pressure of now you need to go and find a new yard in a heartbeat. That's going to affect all my prices. I won't bore you with the details, but you can imagine it's
Yeah,
that was a serious stress I didn't need. It
yeah.
was hard enough as it was. So I tried to keep the council, like I still had to secure my land. I didn't really listen to him, but I smiled and carried on, said, yeah, doff my cap a little bit. And so we had emails back and forth for about 3, 4, maybe 6 months. They were saying, look, Clive, you're still doing the stuff. And I was like, yeah, yeah. I was trying to keep it friendly. Then it got to a point where I found out, I thought I'm going to have to start trying to understand a bit how the council get their authority and how they can force this stuff onto me. So I started looking at their policies, their enforcement policies, and they've all councils around the country. They've got a document called a constitution. That is their Bible. They're not allowed to step outside of that book. And I eventually got my hands on that, and things started to really sort of change when I started reading their policies. I read up on the law. I read legislation. I was a sponge, and actually like I wasn't really keen on reading. As I said, I was interested in football and work. I didn't even like reading the instruction manual on how to put a kitchen together. So
Hey, listen, no man does. Come on.
yeah. So, but that changed for me. I started reading everything on law, and I really enjoyed it. I really got me teeth because the more I read and the more I learned, the further, and the more questions then I asked of the council off the back of what I was learning. The council didn't. They would. I was a bit like a prickly hedgehog. The council kind of like didn't really want to come near me. So I thought I'll just keep asking questions, and then they would leave me alone for months, and then I would read more and learn more, and eventually, it's not that easy. You know what I mean? I have gone through the mill with it, and at the time, I wasn't married then. I was probably in my mid-30s then. I'm 50 now, and I wasn't married at that point, but we were possibly engaged, and anyway, so like I said, things were rolling when my daughter was born, and I was in the heat of the battle then, and but I knew a lot more then. I knew I was on safe ground because I learned a few of the tricks that the legal system used against us. So, like going through this process, I mean, there's lots of opinions online about how the law works, and I've met very few people. Like lots of people have lots of little bits of information, but going through the mill yourself, like you have to. Like, I couldn't rely on people's opinions. I really had to know the answer for sure because I really like I say, my daughter was young. I really couldn't be in prison. I really didn't fancy that.
What
So
was the Constitution book? Is it the same as the council handbook, or is it something different?
no, no. Every council has got a constitution, so it's like a 200-300. It's a huge document, and in each council constitution, usually they've got to supply it to a member of the public for free, like or at least you'll be able to go to the offices and read it. Now we'll get onto this, no doubt, as because I'll explain if you like some
Okay.
of the things I learned and some of the how I managed to sort of begin to free myself.
Yeah,
Because let me tell
I'd
you,
like to get my hand on the Constitution. Yeah.
yeah, well, I've I don't know if you're I've prepared a web page for your audience here to go along with our discussion, and perhaps we'll link it in the description or something. But I on that web page for this discussion, I put a council's constitution in there with some of the key points, just so that well, I'll explain it verbally here now. But if for your audience to go back later and look at, it'll be there for them. Yeah.
Do you want me to share the screen if I bring it up?
Yeah, yeah, okay. But let's talk about the jurisdiction
Okay.
and
Yeah,
things first, and then when we get to that point, we'll bring it up and have a chat about it because it's really, really interesting. I find anyway, but I'm a nerd for law now, so
yeah. Sorry, so I cut you off. So your daughter was born.
yeah. So my daughter was young, and once just before my daughter was, I learned a few of their key tricks. Okay, so I learnt a few of the things that the council need to get jurisdiction of you. And another little thing is they would write letters to me, and in their letters they would refer to me as a customer. Like it would be on their headed paper, it'd be customer services. So just in the early days when I knew very little, but I knew to ask questions. But I looked at their letters, and bearing in mind I've hardly had any dealings with the council before, so I'm getting these letters from these people. I'm looking on their headed paper, and it says customer services. So one of the natural obvious question to me is like, do you think I'm your customer? And if you do, how did I become a customer? And if I am a customer, I don't want to be a customer anymore. Go away. And they can answer these questions. I would write to the CEO and say, listen, like your paper here says I'm customer services. It looks like you regard me as a customer. How did that happen?
Yeah.
Why am I a customer? And I've obviously since then I've been on a 15-year mission. Like I've just devoured information for 15 and been to court. Like I say, I've been around the country helping farmers keep them out of prison and helping them with planning issues. So I've had a really good insight into the planning system. I feel that I understand it very, very well indeed. From a real world perspective, I'm not a lawyer. I haven't been trained in the college, and obviously these guys understand law very well, but from a certain perspective, not from the perspective I was at. They don't have to face prison, and they don't have the things that I've learned. They'll never be taught at a college. The things that I share at the website aren't taught at law school. They're obviously taught to operate within the system. Well, I was operating from outside the system, trying to stay out of prison, so I had a different take on it altogether. But I understand very well how it all goes together now.
Yeah. Okay. So so the battle with the council then, how long How did you go from it being a bit of land with some vans on to then building your farm? Is
That's
there a bit in
that's
between?
yeah. That's a see. I'm quite obviously I play football and things, and I'm quite manage the football team. I'm a fairly confident guy, and once I start understanding some of their tricks they use it because I knew they were lying. They were calling me. We'll get into it in a bit, but they were calling me Mr. Edwards. Okay, now that sounds innocuous enough, doesn't it? Most people get called you might be called Miss Clark every day of the week, and we don't think anything of it. But that isn't my name.
Yeah.
So I would ask, like and as it happens, my dad's got the same name as me. He's also called Clive Edwards, and my granddad, he's not another Clive, but he was a Ronald Edwards. So like Mr. Edwards, who the hell are you talking about?
Mm.
So I mean, it's a never really simple question, but I didn't know at the time, but how important that question was. Just like, am I a customer? It's a really simple question that a child would ask, but it has really big consequences. The answer of that, and so does why do you keep calling me Mr. Edwards? Just call me Clive. That's what I insisted on right from the start. And I didn't even understand the law at the time. But that was problematic for him. And like I said, we'll probably get into a bit of that. So, yeah, filling in the blanks then, like you said. So, again, I'm quite a confident guy. And once I understood that they were lying to me, like this, they had to say I was a customer and they had to say I was Mr. Edwards. Well, those things aren't true. So, and I learned a few. I was devouring information and understanding a little bit at the time how it all worked. So I wrote to the CEO and said, um, I'm going to build myself a house on the field. If you've got any objections, let me know." And I copied in like some of the higher offices and some of the government bodies, and so I let everyone know right from the start I'm going to build a house. Like bearing in mind they were come down on me for putting up a fence. Now I've just written a letter and told them I'm going to build a house. If you've got any objections, let me know. And I guess I was doing that at the time because I was like, I felt I've been bearing in mind I've had my business sort of crushed. Um, the council helped crush that, and then as I was starting to understand the law, I could feel my confidence growing, and so if you like, it was a bit of defiance from my, a letter like that is quite defiant, isn't it? So it's a bit of a red rag to a bull, and I guess I'm a bit bullish, but that actually also stood me in good stead because they could never say to me that I tried to do anything deceitfully or what I mean?
I was going to say
Trying
that,
to,
yeah.
yeah.
At
So I
least
told them
you were transparent, so
exactly right from the off. I said, listen, I'm going to build a house. If you've got any objections, let me know. Now, they never wrote back to me ever. They've never responded to that and said, no, Clive, you can't do that. So I mean, it would that alone would look pretty dodgy going to a court after all this time and saying because I would say, well, I did write to them and say I was going to build a house. Any objections, let me know. They never objected. So just these small things, but they're small but important. So yeah, going back onto your question, yeah, I then I abandoned the wooden posts and started building walls. So the wooden fence, sorry, I started putting like walls all around the field then and sliding gates and erecting like workshops and started building a house and offices. And so I I I guess defiant is the best word. Yeah,
right. So you
yeah,
had a rocket up your ass because they pissed you off,
yes,
and
yeah.
it was your land. You say they helped destroy the business. How?
Well, it again, like I said, it was 2007. Like my phone was going from ringing constantly all day. I thought I had a problem with my phone. I'd be on a roof and I'd be looking at my phone, thinking, "Oh, is my phone still working? Can someone ring my phone?" Because like the phone is probably the case that the BBC announced like Britain's in recession now, and then everyone who thought they were going to have an extension built probably thought, "Oh, let's hold that. We'll cancel the holiday, cancel the
Yeah.
extension," and the phone just stopped ringing. I mean, it really did. That's how it felt like anyway in my mind, and it really it was the most stressful time of my life. Actually, yeah, I
Mm.
was in a very dark place actually. So yeah, and so with this information, like again, like I say, my confidence grew, and I just thought, well, my business, I didn't go bankrupt or bust or anything, but I just thought I'm going to change the way I earn money, and I just changed it all around. So I shelved the business, and I'm quite entrepreneurial, so I put my hand to other things.
Okay. So you started building a house, offices, and then what?
Then things started ramping up, obviously, yeah. So the council then issued. Firstly, they issued one enforcement notice, and then they changed it to nine. Now I know why they did that, because if there's a mistake on one enforcement notice, you can bat out the whole project, if you like. So what they did was split it up into nine different enforcements, so that if they lose ground on one, they still got eight others. If that makes sense.
So they all had a different title, if you like. They all had a different.
Yeah, they all had a different thing, like a different enforcement notice for different things I was doing. So yeah, and each one, like I said, each one's an indictable offence with unlimited fine. So, but I was all in. Do you know what I mean? I was all in. So um, I got my head into studying, and so then the council would do things like they'd have a warrant of entry hearing, but they wouldn't invite me, so they would turn up with a warrant of entry. So these enforcement officers are usually ex-police, like they retire from the police at like 50 or whatever, and then they get an enforcement job with the local council for a few years. It's bread and butter to them. So, like I said, one warrant of
On
entry.
full pension, I hasten to add as well.
Yeah, they get well looked after pretty well, don't they? And anyway, so I had it. I lived down a country lane, and they turned up with a. I kid you not, there was like a right. There was a riot van, um, and a police Land Rover, um, a couple of dog handling units, because I breed Caucasian Shepherd dogs. I've got some of these huge Russian. It's a Russian breed. They're huge things. So they obviously brought the dog units for them, and yeah, and a locksmith and all that. But my gate was open anyway. The bricklayer was down there, and I was visiting my granddad at the time. The bricklayers rang me up and said, "Clive, you better get down here. There's police everywhere." So I came back down the lane. I couldn't get down the lane because there's cars everywhere. So I parked up and ran that back down and saw the enforcement. And I said, "Look, lads, take your pictures, do what you got to do, then get on, can you? Because I got work to do." So which they did. Like I said, I was never. We were on opposite sides of the fence. Excuse the sort of analogy, given the circumstances, but we had different opinions on the law. Okay, the council had their opinion, I had mine, but it never got nasty between the two camps. I think they had a begrudging respect for me, actually, and I was never violent or abusive to them. I understood their perspective, and we just had to sort of talk it out. And I think having that attitude actually stood me in good stead long term, because I knew I wasn't just a troublemaker or just being a pain in the backside for the sake of it. Like,
Yeah,
I had valid reasons, and they couldn't answer even my most simple questions. Like I said to them, if you can't answer my most simple questions, like why am I a customer, and you can't write a letter to me in my name, why on earth should I listen to anything you tell me?
yeah.
So that was my attitude anyway at the time.
Did they ever answer that? Did they ever give you a reason why they couldn't answer it?
No, no, no. So I went on a mission to find out those answers myself. And in doing so, I came to understand how the system of law and governance worked. And then obviously, the more I learned, the harder it was for them to get jurisdiction over me. And jurisdiction is just another word for control. So that I was out of their jurisdiction. I mean, and then I was doing more and more things to make sure I stayed out of their jurisdiction. Then, honestly speaking, they couldn't put me in a box like they do a lot of citizens fall into their traps. I never asked for planning permission, you see. So when you apply for planning permission, that's like a contract with a council. So you effectively, by paying them money, filling out their forms and begging them to please let me have this, put this house up on the land, by going through those processes, you're begging the council and you're putting yourself in a certain position at law, which is a very lowly position. And that's when it turns a council into a local authority. A council is a council, and a local authority is a different thing at law. So a council is just a body of councillors and a group of persons assembling to debate and things. They only become a local authority when you engage with their services. So because I never asked for planning permission, it's counterintuitive, but a lot of stuff I do is counterintuitive to the general public. But by not putting in a planning application, I was in the strongest possible position I could be in.
Interesting. I remember many years ago, I put up a massive building in my garden, which is now, I call it the lodge. And we didn't get planning permission. For us, we were just going to use it for storage. And two neighbours complained. I'm looking at their houses right now. I don't know this for a fact, but I do know it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is a long time ago, and we ended up having to do retrospective planning permission, and we got it agreed eventually. We had to put up some trees, but that's interesting. With
What
your
I used to,
yeah, with your
yeah,
knowledge. would I have just gone up yours? It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, you would have been in a stronger. Yeah, you were in a strong position if you hadn't applied for planning permission. What I used to do, I was a little bit naughty, but what I used to do is complain about myself. From like, I'd set up a different email address and complain about myself. So then the council at the time would tell me what their position was. Like, yeah, it's with the lawyers. We're going to issue. You know what I mean? So I would set myself up as a complainer to find out, this is a few years in, find out what they were doing next when they went quiet, and they would tell the complainer. And actually, it's through I'm sure they think I was a proper pain in the backside, but they changed all the systems after dealing with me. But what I would say is anyone locally, so because I've been through this process and I forced the council to understand their constitution, because all I've done is held them to their constitution. So it'd be easier for people in my area with that council to do the same if they made the similar, same arguments that I made.
Okay. So you just mentioned the Constitution there. How did you get access? Did they give it to you for free, or how did you get
Yeah,
it?
yeah. It's online. You could get your local council's constitution. It will be online.
Yeah,
So you
okay.
can download it online. It's a huge document, but I used to get them to print it off and go and collect it from their offices.
Right.
So I had a hard copy and I could view it online.
And off the top of your head, what was the main nuggets for you when you started reading through that?
Right, yeah. So right, I'll just touch on this then. So most people, like most of your audience, you hear this phrase all the time from from people at protests and things. They'll shout it like the government buildings, like you're supposed to serve the people. We're the
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
But most of these people at protests aren't people at law. Now that might sound like a strange statement to make. And if that's news, if that's fresh to your ears, which it looks from your
Well, no, I
expression,
want
I'm
to know
thinking,
what I know. I want to know what you're
yeah,
going to say next.
yeah, exactly. Well, at law, I mean, I don't know what your position is, but at law, most people are what is known at law as citizens, or and citizens and persons are very similar. It's the lowest. So
Yeah,
hang on, let me rephrase this. So when you go on the electoral register and then you register to vote, you then become what's known as a commoner because you're a member of the House of Commons. So you send a member of Parliament to the House of Commons who represents you.
yeah.
So you're known at law. People who vote and or who are also on the electoral register are what is known at law as commoners. And Mel, you often hear people say, "Oh, we're treated like second-class citizens."
Yeah.
That's a common phrase. A commoner is not a second-class citizen. A commoner is a third-class citizen.
Okay.
They're a member of the third estate of the realm. So that a commoner is the lowest form, the lowest position you can be at law.
Well, just by being on the electoral register, are you classed as a
Yes,
commoner? Even if you don't
yes,
vote or whatever, you're still classed as a
yeah.
commoner. Right.
Yeah, I've got it in many places on my website where I've got the Black Barrister explaining this in a very very brief clip. But that is where the consent of the governed comes from. Your consent is gained the minute you go on the electoral register, not who you vote for, or not by I'm not going to vote this year, but I'm going to vote in the next one. Once you're on that electoral register, that is when you've given your consent to be governed, no matter what party gets in.
And presumably you're not on the electoral register.
I was at the time when all this kicked off with the council. So when I started learning some of this stuff, I took myself off. I took the name off of the electoral register.
Was it easy to do?
Yeah, I just sent a notice in to the Attorney General. I never bothered with the local. I just sent him a notice saying, "Look, I rescind and retract and revoke, get my name off any and all electoral registers, voting apparatus, whatever you rely on to think that you've got my consent. You haven't got it anymore. Take it off of everything." Just a simple, like I say, I just do things simply. I don't need to sound like a lawyer. I don't pretend to be a lawyer. Just tell them straight.
And where was the Attorney General?
What? Well, I'll tell you why he's called the Attorney General. No, I won't get into that right now because we're not on that. But the Attorney General's in London.
Okay.
He's down in London, yeah, the Attorney General's office. But yeah, so I undone some again. Like you remember, I said I undone some of these ties. Now I'm not a UK citizen. All
Okay.
right, so the councils have just pure authority over citizens. They're in the constitution. A citizen is called the electorate. So there's a clue in the title what they call you in their own constitutions. You're one of the electorate. And that's the lowest position you can be in. You've got a right to complain and things like that, but the council's much higher than you in law and governance. They're there to um, govern you. But the council's constitution also mentions people. So, and the people are in that's the highest authority. It's the highest position you can be in.
Yeah.
So I'll just tell you briefly, because you might find this interesting. Your audience might find this interesting. But King Charles in his coronation, he gets coronated with two crowns. So one crown is a crown of God, and that is for the people. The other crown is the imperial crown. That's a Roman crown for the citizens. Okay. Judges swear two oaths of office. So a judge in all the courtrooms, they have to swear two oaths. One oath is to be a judge for God, and the other oath is to swear allegiance to the king. So on the one side, he looks after the people, and on the other side, he, like your local council does, rules over the persons, the electorate. There's two jurisdictions of state, and these are some of the things I found out, and I made sure I got out of one of them. And that even applies to a local police officer. So your local police officer enforces the policies of the United Kingdom. He's a policy enforcer. But a constable, we've all seen the constable's oath. They're there to protect people and property.
Yeah.
So that's on the people side. So this jurisdictional divide goes right the way down from the head of state right down to your local council.
So, by deregistering from the electoral, um, does that mean you now, obviously, they have no authority over you, which means now you don't have any liability for things like council tax or things
Yeah,
like
it's
that?
it's not as straightforward as that. So it's not as I compare it to a duck farm. Okay, like the government run a duck farm. You can opt to, you know, you can opt to leave the duck farm. There's no lock on the gate. Like you can do what I did and rescind your electoral register and get off the your name being on the electoral register is evidence of your consent to be governed. That's the application. That's the contract. However people want to describe it, but there's a name signed on a piece of paper that says, "Yeah, I consent to be governed." That is the consent of the governed. So I got rid of that. So now at least I'm not lying when I write to the council and tell them I'm not a UK citizen because they can't go on a record anywhere and find that I am. All right. So a lot of these people at protests that are saying we're the people, that's not true.
Okay, got you.
They're there as citizens. They're there as commoners, and they're there as third class citizens. So that's why the government don't listen.
Yeah. And hence why these petitions never really get any traction.
Yeah. You can only legally sign a petition if you're on the electoral register. Uh, That's the trap.
How difficult does life become not being on that register? Because I know, I mean, if you care about your credit rating, obviously it's an issue if you wanted to get finance, this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. But in
I've
reality,
had no problems, Mel. I've had no problems because I mean, see, there's obviously there's layers to this discussion. Okay, clearly, like barristers trained for years to know some of this. So, in an hour long conversation, we're not going to untie all the tricks and all the traps of the legal system, but we can, using my case study, if you like, I mean, I'm out of it. If you can escape the clause of the local council, because that's where the rubber meets the road. If you don't pay your council tax, if you build an extension, as you find out, without permission, it's the council that's going to drag you in the court and throw you in jail. It's not someone from down in London. So if you can deal with things at council level and they've got a law book called a constitution that will help you if you understand it. And I've got my website is full of free articles and information that will help you to understand how you're governed. And then it will help you to understand how to read that that constitution a bit better and understand where you sit in it. And as I say, this discussion, I've evidenced a constitution in that where it talks about the people, the electorate, and the people. So it even delineates in the council's own constitution those two sectors of society. So of
right.
course, when I started learning this stuff and started telling the council, but that council's constitution binds them. It doesn't bind me; it binds them. That's their law book. And I started writing each council has got like an auditory scrutiny section. They're called Section 151 officers, and they've got independent persons as well. So if you believe your council's not being run lawfully, you can write to these persons and ask them to investigate and find out what's going on. So I wrote to these scrutiny and auditor type persons, sorry. I wrote to them and explained, listen, your council's acting outside the bounds of their jurisdiction. I'm one of the people. They don't even understand their own constitution. And I wrote several letters like that and included some important people from government. And I went back and looked a few months later at some of the minutes of the meetings. They started having lessons on the constitution for the councillors and stuff. Like these things, like a well-worded letter from the right. Now, if a letter came in like that from one of the citizens, it would probably end up in the bin. Remember, a citizen is a third class. A citizen is a commoner who is a third class citizen. You've got very little standing at law. Like you're in the gutter. But as one of the people, now I'm above the council. So that's where it gets interesting.
That is interesting. I've mentioned this a few times, but I got made bankrupt by my council last year,
Right.
fraudulently, without due process, and with in my opinion, corrupt judge who I'm currently in court with at the moment because I called him a liar. So it'd be interesting for me. My mind's racing at the moment about deregistering, becoming one of the people, and then,
Yeah, yeah. Well,
but
one of the
obviously,
biggest mistakes and I don't know your case, but I'm just gonna throw a big wild guess out there. But I'm guessing you're letting them address you as Mrs. Mel Clark. For what they're putting that title on you, as Mrs., which puts you in there as a commoner, as the lowest jurisdiction, the lowest. Sorry, not the lowest jurisdiction, the lowest position at law you can be in. So I never let them call me that. Like
yeah,
never. I'd die first. You get my name right, and then we can have a chat.
yeah,
So that I can give you a few pointers if you like, Mel. But yeah. So yeah, that's there's a few traps you may have already fallen into, but they can be redressed.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Um, so as one of the people, they now can't deal with you how they normally deal with the rest of the plebs in the country as we are.
Yeah.
So you basically built this house and offices and whatever else. Was that with the intention of having a farm, or did that come later?
No, it's always the intention. I normally when say I'm building a farm, I put it in quotes because I'm not. Although I'm from like my granddad was a farmer and his family, and my wife's family are farmers. I'm really from construction, but I have experience on farms. So I'm not a farmer per se. So I would class it more as a small holding. I want to be self-sufficient. I just want to get some polytunnels up and grow my own food and have a few animals here and just be left alone, really, Mel.
Yeah,
And I have been like, we'll get onto it at some point in here because the council hired in an expert to come in, like, specially for my case for me, and we had a chat. We'll get onto that. Perhaps we'll get onto it now. But ultimately, the conclusion of that meeting was the expert said to me, the council's expert said, Clive, we're not going to take you to court. So I left the meeting, and that was pretty much the end of that. They had one last attempt to try to get me to apply for planning permission. That's the hook. They dangled the carrot because that's the contract. If I'd have applied for planning permission, they said, look, we'll look on it favorably. There's other development going on around, and this, that, and the other. If you put the application in, and I said to this guy, I said, look, I've done all right so far without asking you for anything, so I don't think I'm going to start now. And that was it. He left his job, and I've been left alone.
how long ago was that?
That was probably, I'm guessing, but I suppose COVID's like a bit of a time warp, isn't it? Like it may have been sort of 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 5, but like, it was a good few years ago. And
Long time.
since then, I've obviously increased what I'm doing here. I'm still, building things, and yeah. So
Wow. So they put a specific guy on to investigate who
yeah,
came and met you probably a few times and tried to push their regulations onto you,
yeah.
and you
He
just
wrote
kept
me
saying no.
he wrote me the nicest letter I've ever received from the council when he was first employed. And what I like to do with everyone who writes to me, especially from the council, from enforcement, especially if it's a new guy, because I've gone through about 5 different enforcement officers. Each one of their enforcement officers takes on the job thinking they're going to deliver my head on a platter to the CEO, and each one of them goes away with their tails between their legs. But so they've got this specialist guy in from Wales, and they've hired him for this job. I know that because I asked him, and he sort of smiled at me and said, "Yeah." So I said, look, David, his name was. I said, look, David, instead of all these letters, I'll just come in. We'll have a meeting. We'll have a bit of a chat if you like. And he said, yeah, okay then. So anyway, we had a meeting. And before the meeting got started, I said to him, look, I'm going to ask you a few simple questions because I thought if this guy lies to me, then I know he's a liar and I'm not interested in the meeting. I'll just walk out. So I said, is it illegal not to have planning permission? And he said, no, it's not. You don't have to have planning permission. So I was like, thank you. I said, have I got a right to a private life? Everyone, and that'll be in your council's constitution as well. You got a right to, now, only a people have got a right to a private life. You haven't got a right to a private life if you're one of the citizens and one of the electorate and are a commoner. So I'll just put that out there. But and he said, yes, you've got a right to a private life. What was the other question I asked? Oh, I said, can the council force themselves to be my authority? And he said, no, they can't. And so effectively, the guy, their expert, has now just agreed with my case. Do you know what I mean? So, like, but the truth's the truth. Once you understand the rules of the game, we're all, the truth is the truth. And if he's an expert in planning, that's why I asked the questions, because I knew the answers. And I thought, if he don't know the answers, he's not an expert or he's a liar. Either way, I'm not interested in talking to him. So, but he told the truth, and the meeting ended. He told me they're not interested in taking me to court, and that was the end of that. He left his job about a month or so after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's been it's not all been a walk in a bed of roses because, like I say, I've had riot vans and police dogs, and also, I've had police turn up and visit with the council officers, all very friendly, mind you. It's not like but nevertheless, it's still a real intrusion, a violation. When someone just walks, imagine someone just walking up into your back garden and sort of
Yeah.
walking around taking photographs of everything. It's not a nice feeling, but I think you've got to go through that baptism of fire. They got to press a few buttons on you to see what you're made of, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm learning that more and more, especially in court as well. If you stand, like you said, do not address me as Miss Clark, and you stick to your guns, and they could be running one of four jurisdictions in these bullshit admin courts. And it's trying to, and they can slip between all four in one hearing, is my understanding now. So it's tricky, and you've got to know your stuff, but it all comes down to confidence.
I would say, yeah, in a roundabout, or how I would phrase it is this: from knowledge comes confidence.
Yeah,
If you understand what's going on, then you can counteract it, and then your confidence can grow from that. And most of these courts treat the defendants as third class citizens, as commoners, as Mr. and Mrs. is. But you can rebut that. You can sort of put paperwork in before you get there and say, listen, don't be I'll come there, but I'm coming to correct the error in the name. There's a maxim of law that says the presence of the body corrects the error in the name. Now that can work two ways. If you're a defendant there and you don't know anything about the law, and you're there as Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Smith, then they're going to treat the body as that name. But if you let them know that I'm coming, but I'm coming to court to correct the error in the name, I'm not Mr. Edwards. You can call me Clive if you like. Then that can work in your favor. That doing it that way.
yeah. Okay, good to know. Is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you want to share about this particular part?
I don't think so, Mel. I think we've sort of covered it. Yeah, it started small and ended up big.
And you mentioned this web page that you've done, and so what's this for?
Yeah, I've done a web page for our chat here today. And so basically, if people want to find out a little bit more about some of the areas of law and governance that we've talked about, like the council's constitution, like the people versus persons, and like voting and the hierarchy of so in law and governance, there's like a hierarchy, and God's at the top, then it's the Bible, then you come down, it's like the crown, the monarchy, then the government, then at the bottom of everything is citizens and
Yeah.
commoners, persons. So I've put a few things in place for some of your audience who might like to go and think, oh, that's interesting. I'll go and just examine that a little bit further. So I put a web page together for this podcast that they can go and have a look at.
Have you got it to hand, or shall I put it up and share it?
Um, you can share it if you like, Mel. Yeah, I gave you the
Yeah.
sent you the link for it. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So I'm just going to share my screen then, and you've kindly set up this web page. Let me know if you can see that, Clive. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Cool. So, oh, there's me at the top. So this is capillarywave.com. So where do you want me to go?
If you scroll down, if you click that link that says the understanding the council's constitution and the two roles of state, if you click on that in the contents, it will take you straight down there.
Got you. Okay.
That's it. So, if you scroll down there, see that where it says section 3, members of the council. I've highlighted and pointed arrows to the bits in this constitution where it distinguishes between people and persons. This is what we were talking about earlier.
Is this it? Responsibilities and duties?
Yes, yeah, and then so that box there highlights the differences between the electorate and the people.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's very serious. Now, if most of us are unaware of these distinctions in law between citizens, commoners, the electorate, persons, so we would have read this if we would have read it at all and not really taken much notice of that.
That's right.
But once we start understanding some of this, and I've underlined it here, and I've pointed this out to my council. I've highlighted some of these things back at my council, and told them which side of the divide I'm on. And on the other page below that, highlights it again: the electorate, and the people. If it was all the same thing, they would just say the electorate or or people, but it's not.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Absolutely.
Now, these are very small things, and we could easily brush over them, but they're very, very, very important. So if you let me just find out where it is. Yeah, if you scroll back up a little bit now, go back up the page to just understanding the two separate distinct jurisdictions, legal and lawful. So keep going back up. You'll see a table. Keep going up past the pyramid, like the hierarchy. That's it. Keep going back up. Keep going. Right, that one there. Right. That there, in layman's terms, are the two jurisdictions available at Britain.
Yeah.
Okay, Britain is the landmass. That's the White Cliffs of Dover, the sea, the earth, and the rocks, and what we see when we look out of our window. United Kingdom is a body politic. It's a legal fiction.
Yeah.
So it's a contemplation of law. So on the left hand side is the United Kingdom stuff, all the legal fictions, and persons are in that, and the public. And on the right hand side, that's the jurisdiction that I would regard myself as being in. If you're in this side, you're out of their jurisdiction on the left-hand side. Now, I'm not a UK citizen. Now, I am at Britain. And I've got a specific article. If people are confused that are listening to this and want to find out more, one of my articles on the homepage of the website is called The Framework of Law and Governance, and that will walk you through it. It's a very short article, but it's a very important one. And that'll explain the distinctions between these two jurisdictions. Now, when I started my problems with the council, I was over here on the left. I was in the league. I was in the United Kingdom, being Mr. Edwards. That's a never legal fiction. The title. I was a citizen, so I was under the monarchy, parliament, and government, and the local authority. I was a constituent. I was all of those things. So I was complete. So obviously, they can come and turn up and tell you exactly what to do if you're over there on the left. But over time, I understood what was going on, and I made sure the council knew that I'm over here on the right now. And then I used their constitution that we just looked at to point the same differences out in their constitution. What we just looked at a second ago with the electorate and the people, that is the two jurisdictions that's in front of us there, on the left and the right. Electorate are on the left, and the people are on the right.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on so some people will say Britain's wrong as well. It needs to be the realm of England and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I understand that, and to a certain degree, they are correct on some levels because United Kingdom is not England, and England is not Britain. They're all different jurisdictions. So they do have different jurisdictions. Okay, so but the main one that your audience and I'm concerned of, the one that all I needed to worry about was getting out of the United Kingdom jurisdiction
Yeah.
and becoming one of the people again. Now but see, I did all my fighting with a pen and paper from my lounge and some books and the internet. I don't need to go to London and join a petition because all of those things will pretty much put you in the left-hand category, right back in the trap.
Right.
The political game is the Punch and Judy show. That is the trap. So we've got a uni party now, aren't we? Labour and Conservative. Like even the masses are waking up to that. So they bring in another little character, like a Nigel Farage type character,
Yeah.
and then they get everyone all excited again, and they go and register to vote and jump back on the in the voting track, and they jump straight back into the left hand side. Uh, if I was if I was to vote Reform, for argument's sake, and get on the electoral register again, then they'd come and knock the farm down. I just wouldn't have been able to do what I've done. But
Yeah.
because I understood some of this stuff, I disentangled myself from it all.
Yeah. Amazing. Is there anything else on this page, or is that?
No, I mean it's all pretty self-explanatory. We've sort of spoke about it really, Mel, most of
Yeah.
it. So yeah, what I would say is at the moment, there's what I would say because I've been around the country and helping a lot of farmers. I've gone literally from Cumbria down to Cornwall, helping farmers at court keep them out of trouble with the council, and I've kept some out of prison. Right now, the farmers are facing a bit of a problem, aren't they, with inheritance tax and all the things they've got going on. Now, they're going to have to think differently than their father did, their grandfather, and their fathers before them. Because if they're involved on the left hand side of that jurisdictional diagram, then they have got no sway whatsoever. Jumping in a tractor and driving down to London and getting on stage with some MPs is never ever going to work. Trust me, I've been there and done it. I've got the T-shirt, and if I did any of those things, I wouldn't have been able to build a farm without. Like the council aren't a problem to me anymore. We get on just fine. They leave me alone, and I leave them alone. I'm not a problem to them, and they're not a problem to me. This can happen. I know other people that are doing this. I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
I know other farmers and like farmers. Some of them I've helped. They're doing what I'm doing. So it is possible. That's why I'm sort of come out in the public recently. Is to let because things are getting pretty serious, aren't they, out there in the world? And people need to speak up, and we need to change the game a little bit and start understand how we're being governed. And sadly, most people were like myself, like I was clueless, and I see it a lot. But it doesn't take too much to learn to understand, but it takes bravery and a bit of courage, mind you. But once you've got a bit of knowledge, that comes.
And these farmers that you've been helping, have they just been threatened with prison because they've been building stuff on their land?
Yet some of them have just got like a few acres with a static caravan on it.
Yeah.
And some of these farmers are stubborn as stubborn old gits, and they won't budge. And fair play to them. But if it's all very well being stubborn as one of the people, well, that's fine. But don't be doing that as one of the citizens, or you're going to end up in prison.
Right.
I know people who've gone to prison because they don't quite fully understand that.
Yeah. And what's your thoughts? You just made me think of Clarkson's Law. Is it called Clarkson's Law? You know, when Jeremy Clarkson got had to close his restaurant down, and then
Yeah.
then now he's it was a building that was already on there, and he wanted to use it, and they wouldn't let him, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, Jeremy Clarkson. He used barristers, and so most people know when you hire a solicitor, the first thing you have to do when you hire a solicitor is give them identification, and all of these bits of paper declare to a solicitor that you are Mrs. Mel Clark. So again, that's the trap. If I hired a barrister, there's no way that I could have done what I've done because by hiring a barrister, it puts you in as a UK citizen. Only a UK citizen can hire a barrister. So that's again the trap. You really have to take responsibility, take on board this knowledge and learn it, and then you can stand on your own 2 feet. You won't need a barrister.
Hmm. Okay. Cool. Um, so if people listening want to learn more about you, maybe are interested, it sounds like you've obviously got some kind of membership running. Where's the best? Obviously, you've got capillarywave.com. I imagine that's the best hub for you. But are you doing any socials or anything like that if people wanted to interact with you? Or
Yeah, we've got a Facebook group that runs, which is we got like 4,500 odd members over there on Facebook. But Facebook's such a poor platform. I post on there fairly regularly. It's not my my main focus is the capillarywave.com and our community there. But I do go on Facebook and do answer questions there with like legal problems and post questions there. But Facebook shadow ban all my posts. Even our own members over there can't see my posts. So it's really a waste of time. But I do go. So from capillarywave.com, you can find me on X and on Facebook. But you can become a gold member. There is a membership joining fee. And then we've got our own forum where we discuss all of these things. And I would advise that for people that are, serious about sorting their situation out, I would say,
Yeah.
rather than just a passing interest. Yeah.
And is the book ready? Is it out?
I'm in the middle of editing it at the moment, and I'm going to do a book launch, and details will be at the website and on our Facebook group. So I'm planning on doing a speaking event and a book launch probably September in Somerset. So people can come and join us on our Facebook group. Come and join us at the Capillary Wave as a gold member, and stay in the loop by all means.
Okay, cool. Well, I look forward to that. I like to finish these conversations with anything you feel called to share before we close up. Putting you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah, you are putting me on the spot now, Mel, aren't
Sorry.
you? What am I going to share? Well, I guess honestly, Mel, and you sort of said it by reading out my quote at the start, really, and that's my mission. The whole reason I'm out in the public now. I mean, I don't really. Chris Brooks got me on a podcast, the first one. It took me about 3 or 4 months to make my mind up to see if I was even going to bother to go on one. Because you know what it's like. If you're out there sticking your head above the parapet, I was like, do I really need all the grief? But I feel the situation at large is so dire now and so serious. I feel almost a duty to come and try and explain a bit about what I know, because it can help people. So what I've done is I've created a lot of free articles on my own website, capillarywave.com. There's free articles there on the homepage that will explain in great detail some of the fundamental principles that allowed me to build a farm. This isn't just me waffling on the internet. This is serious stuff that can help you in your life and your family of your audience. So I would say if you read the first 3 or 4 or 5 articles, you'll know more about law and governance than your local bobby, the local magistrates. You know what I mean? It's going to really elevate your knowledge and begin to breed confidence for yourself in your own life.
Yeah.
That would be what I would say, Mel.
Those are your pearls of wisdom.
Yeah. I've
Okay.
shared them in article form. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Clive. I've seen you. I think you've been on Vobes as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I've been on Richard's
Been on
channel. Yeah.
Vobes.
Yeah.
So I have seen you, but not dived in. And it was actually Chris that suggested that I got in touch with you, and I'm so glad that he did. This has been really enlightening for me, and I love anybody that does that to the authority and wins.
Well, I enjoyed doing it, Mel, as well. So that's 2 of us.
Yeah. So I know the audience are going to have loved this chat. Thank you so much, Clive. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Mel. Likewise. Thank you.